Okay, it's my privilege to introduce today Brother Paul Wilson. Paul has joined us here at BYU, Hawaii, as part of our entrepreneurship faculty. He came during the summer in time for that, he and his wife to have their third child, their first son. They have two, he and his wife Lindsay have two beautiful daughters, and a son was born here in Hawaii, so that's pretty good to be able to do that. Paul is a very passionate, results-oriented web marketing specialist with 14 years experience in search engine optimization and new media marketing. We have a new course that he's teaching here on campus called E-commerce and mobile apps. It's under our Entrepreneurship 390R course. He's managed marketing efforts for hundreds of small businesses, including websites, and has held senior level marketing positions for large corporations. Paul is a managing partner in Question Media, a successful media firm focusing on building authoritative brands and communities for their in-house web properties. Paul earned his Master's of Science from Carnegie Mellon University in Information Technology and loves to speak on the transforming power of new media in business. Currently, he's co-authoring a book detailing Pinterest's visual influence on digital businesses. Again, as I say, Paul and his wife Lindsay have these three wonderful children. It's been our opportunity to get to know them during the last month or two, and I hope that you will get the opportunity to get to know him, not only speaking here today, but by potentially coming and taking one of the classes he teaches, or coming to these workshops that start a week from. Please join me in welcoming Brother Paul Wilson.
We definitely don't want to restart this right in the middle of this, so let me take care of this really quick. There we go. First of all, aloha. 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 Thank you. Sometimes I think just being here, we get into just casually saying that, and I think there's a lot of power in the aloha. All right. I want to begin my presentation first with just sharing the humility of being here. Not necessarily to present to you, but more in the awe of you students taking the time to come here. I know for many of you this is a class, but you still have agency on coming or not. And I know you're very busy, and I know there are a lot of demands on you, and I really do stand in awe at all that you do. I have considered greatly exactly what to share today, and what to go through and how it's impacted in my life. And as I was pondering my many topics that I was looking at, the thought that came to me recently, a few months ago, I had an opportunity to sit on a panel with some phenomenal entrepreneurs. And each entrepreneur in their own right had done amazing things. And we were all asked the question of what does it take to be successful? And it was interesting as we talked how much we contradicted each other. Some said, the best way to be successful is to do X. Others said the best way to be successful is to do Z. And from that experience, I learned something about just life in general. Oftentimes as entrepreneurs, and particularly successful entrepreneurs, we mix up the difference between a law and a function. A law is something that doesn't change. It is universal, whereas a function is how you apply to that law. So the law of mortality, everything that is born is going to die. That is a law. That isn't something that changes in this temporal existence. The function of You know, being born, obviously, that can happen naturally, surgically, scientifically, or unnaturally. Or the function of death, you can die of old age, you can die of disease, accident, your own self-destruction. And so there's a lot of ways to apply to that law. And so the law that I kind of want to speak today on is the law of happiness. And really that law is that happiness is found within the journey. And the functions that I will be sharing with you is how to apply knowledge, apply purpose, and to apply branding to passion also being a function of the law of happiness. There are a lot of different ways that we can achieve the law of happiness. One of the functions that we can look at is working for someone else. That is a function of living the law of happiness, living the journey. We talk about happiness being in the journey, and part of that journey may be working for someone else, working for yourself, not working at all, and kind of the function of happiness is when you're working for someone else or for yourself is you are just content in providing enough for your family. That's fine. Or another function you might want to provide excess for you and your family. Or the final one is you might not want to provide anything at all. You know, we oftentimes look at, and I love Hawaii because you can drive down the beach and you can see a lot of people who apply that function of finding happiness in the journey where they live on the beach. There's a man that we pass every day that has a little fire right on the beach, pulls his food in, and doesn't work at all. And that is his way of applying the law of happiness. I want to share with you kind of how I apply to the law of happiness. And I encourage you to, as I share these functions, to look at them and consider if it is something that is pertinent to your own life. This isn't doctrine, according to Paul. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the only way that you need to do something. For me, going and pursuing my dreams has brought great peace and happiness to me. But there are a lot of other roads in having that happiness. So I had an opportunity. This painting here is called All Roads Lead to Nowhere. And if you kind of look at the painting, it to me explains how the world looks at the existence, how there's nothing going to happen. And I came across this a long time ago, and the title really impacted me, and I've changed it, a quote, to something that meant more to me, where all roads, or I should say all temporal roads, because we know that the eternal roads definitely lead us to somewhere, but all temporal roads lead to nowhere. Choose a path of passion. If you're gonna, no matter what we do, 100 years from now, it's going to be dust, plain and simple. So instead of doing something that you hate or dislike, find something that you can truly go after and enjoy. And so the first thing that, as I understood that quote, I really wanted to understand what my passion is. And I am very passionate. Obviously, I've done entrepreneurism, and I'm going to talk about kind of my path through entrepreneurism. But believe it or not, my passion isn't entrepreneurism. I've used the tool of internet marketing, which I enjoy using, but that isn't my passion. My passion is creating and teaching. Like creating something successful and then articulating those principles to others so that they can try and see if it works for them. And I discovered this in high school. So I was a junior in 1995. I know some of you, I asked some of my class, who was born in 1995? Let's ask that. Yeah, that's what I thought. So about half of you guys. Wow, I feel old. Okay. In 1995, I took a class on creating your own business, and we called it Eclectic Inc. It was a real business. We had to incorporate it. We had to have a CEO, which I applied for and had the position. And this little psycho clown was our mascot. And what we did is we organized rock concerts and sold tickets and sold shirts. And I lost my shirt on that. In fact, it was interesting. We did the whole thing, and at the end of the semester, I get a call from my teacher, because this is pre-email, sort of. Email was around, but not really. And she said, "You've got to come down to the bank and put $100 in, because we're $100 in the hole." Well, as a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old that didn't have that much money, that was a hard lesson in entrepreneurism that I had to pay. But even though I didn't succeed the typical story you hear from entrepreneurs is my first business, I went and made millions. I came to understand that entrepreneurship was like art, where I got to decide what the paint was. And instead of being the paint, like many of you have jobs where you are either the paintbrush or you're the paint, and the artist is telling you exactly how they want to apply you to the canvas. And that was my very first taste of entrepreneurism. I went on a mission to Southern California, had a amazing experience there that changed my entire life. And after that, I came home and I went to school, and I started a business there with these three wonderful people. The good-looking guy in glasses in the middle is me. My social entrepreneur class says I look older in that picture than now, which I find humorous. But how we started this was at the time I was actually at what is now called Utah Valley University, and I had heard of BYU Provo starting a business plan competition. So I got these three friends here. Two of them were from BYU, and then me and another friend were from UVU, and we wrote this business plan. And the plan in 1999 was absolutely revolutionary, where we decided we were going to have internet access in all the rooms in apartment complexes, and instead of charging individual people in using our internet, we were going to charge the landlord, who was going to increase the rent. And that way we only had to work with one person. And we actually implemented it. At BYU, we took third place. And we took that plan, and in 2000 was the very first business plan competition that the state of Utah launched, and there were hundreds of student teams that entered that, and we submitted our plan, and we won first place, and we won $10,000, which at the time just seemed absolutely amazing, and went like that. And it really launched me into a life of marketing. It was the position I held in CityNet Systems. The girl in the picture, she was our president. She went on to do other things, and the guy to the right, Logan, he went on to be a physician assistant. He works for a prison. But the guy to my left, on this side, so this left, my left, is John Benson. He is my current business partner. He and I took CityNet Systems, and we worked for several years on it. And then I came to a crossroad where I had to decide whether or not I was going to go back to school and finish up my degree, because I had put it on hold, or continue on with the business. John had already graduated, and so he decided to stay, and I went back. I transferred over to BYU Provo, got my degree in a very applicable entrepreneur major, philosophy and theology. I had a lot of fathers when I was dating asking what I was going to do with that degree to take care of their daughters. Anyway, John took that business, and a few years after, he gutted it and created another company, and then sold that company, the original CityNet Systems, for $6 million. Did really well. And then after that, he had a lot of money, so I approached him and said, hey, let's do an internet marketing company. And he jumped on, and that's what we currently do. Part of how I discovered that passion, though, wasn't just from that competition. It was from going to school and working for other people. You're going to hear a lot of entrepreneurs who tell you two things, and there are two things that I strongly disagree with, and you'll have to come for yourself, you'll have to decide for yourself whether these two things are important. First, you don't necessarily need school. Now, we see amazing examples of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, obviously, Microsoft, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. These are guys that dropped out. And I am a firm believer that those are outliers. By going on and getting my master's, going to Pennsylvania and getting a degree in information technology, doors were opened that I could have never physically opened without my degree. In fact, being here, talking to you now, I believe that I would not have this opportunity if I didn't have those degrees. And so I encourage you to take every path possible that will open up doors. You may be the Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and that may be something, a function to the law of happiness that you apply. But I encourage you that no matter which direction you go, and whether you drop out of school or not, that continually learning will only improve yourself. The second thing that most entrepreneurs wear as a badge of honor is never working for anyone. And I have quite a few friends who are millionaires and billionaires that have always worked for themselves. And I'm going to talk about a little bit later on the importance of working for other people. From all of this, I was able to start my current company, Question Media. And Question Media, what I discovered as I was doing Question Media. Question Media, we are a search engine marketing company. We don't take on clients. We're a very unique company. Or I should say, we take on few clients. Instead, what we do, I consulted for many, many years, and I got fed up with clients not listening to the advice I was giving them. And there was a question that kept on nagging me, saying, if you really believe this, why aren't you going and doing it yourself, instead of just working with those that will do it? And so that's exactly what Question Media is. We create our own websites. Like Brother Tanner had shared in my bio, we build the websites, we add revenue streams in them, and then we market them through the search engines. And this is not part of our business model, but it happens where a company comes along, they see that we're doing really well in the search engines, and they offer us a high 6 figures or 7 figures for just the website. They don't even buy our company. They pay, normally it's a little under $1 million or a little over $1 million for a simple website. And we've had that happen for us. And because of being able to do all of that, Question Media has helped me find my real passion, which is what I was sharing with you, creating and teaching. This business allows me to be here today, to be a volunteer missionary, and to teach entrepreneurism. So as I went through that whole journey, that's the passion that I realized. And there were three things that I noticed through that journey that really helped make that passion a reality. Because often, who here is a musician? Okay? Who here is an artist? Science. Okay? I throw out the first two because the musician, the artist, you guys always hear that that is not a career that you're going to make money at. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. In fact, I've worked with a lot of musicians and artists who do really well. Scientists, you guys, the reason why I throw that out is you have a long road ahead of you, and one thing that can really help each and every one of you is becoming a passionate expert now. Working on what you can do to be an expert in what you love. So, in 2005, the magazine Science printed out a study on exactly what it takes to be an expert. Now, it's really hard to quantitatively and even qualitatively study what does it take to become an expert. one thing that they found that they could study was chess. Chess was very easy to say, okay, how long does it take for someone to decide to make the right move? And they, for the last 100 or so years, they have been studying people who play a lot of chess. And there's an interesting case study that was done in Canada back in the early 80s, and they followed a guy that all they know about him is the initial CJ. And he started out as a novice chess player. And they followed him for 9 years until he became what they call a grandmaster chess player. And from all that data, they learned some very interesting things. The common notion of becoming an expert is to practice. Practice, practice, practice. Those that were musicians, or those of you that have played piano and those sort of things, that's what you hear all the time. And you hear, practice makes what? Perfect. The science and the studies have found that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. What they learned is people only excel to where they're comfortable. So take golf, for example. I'm horrible at golf, and I have a respect for the game because I know how difficult it is. A lot of people that learn will play and play and play until they are good enough as their friends, and they do not go any further. And even though they play it all the time, they really make very incremental advancements. What they learned were those that truly excelled and became experts were those that faced problems and challenges. So practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Problems make perfect. The more you challenge yourself, and I know as students, you guys feel overwhelmed. A lot of you are taking 16 to 18 credits, which just blows my mind, because I know, particularly as an instructor, how time intensive that is. And so you're looking at your studies and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's the minimum I can do in order to get an A? I encourage you with your passion that you do effortful studies. You take on the problems, you take on the challenges, and you continually do it over and over and over. Science shows that in order to become an expert, to be considered an expert, you got to put in 10,000 hours. I know that some of you here have put in 10,000 hours in video games, and know that without a doubt. And often, in fact, I've been on panels where they've criticized you for spending so much time on video games. But yet, when I was at Carnegie Mellon, the NSA, the FBI, a lot of the top government organizations were looking for those people, because those skill sets that you're learning from your video games, because you have become experts, can be applied into other fields. And so I know I've given some hope to people here who are going to say, I'm not doing my studies anymore, I'm going to go play video games. And if that's how you want to take that function, so be it. But it definitely, you can make money at that. And I have a friend who has put in well over 10,000 hours into video games and has one of the most successful online video games out there. And so there's a lot of different ways that as you continually work on the problems, playing the same game over and over and over with video games, you're not going to excel much in it. It's taking on the bigger challenges. The next thing is break things and learn why. And really what I want to share here is be perpetually curious. So here is a mock-up of a person that a lot of us haven't heard about. His name is Jan Wenck, and he's Polish. He lived in the 1860s, and he is actually attributed as one of the first persons to take flight. We often think of the Wright brothers being the first people to go in the air, but he beat them by 50 years. And he had no formal education at all. And he was a sculptor, and he studied ducks. And he wanted to understand how ducks flew. And so his apparatus that he created here, he didn't know aviation or anything about it, but he did know the form of a duck. And in fact, if you look at his sculptures, they say the wings on, he did a lot of religious sculptures. The wings were the most exquisite part of his sculptures. And he had a lot of crashes, and how he died was in one of his crashes. So obviously breaking things can lead to your demise. But again, all paths lead to nowhere. And they talk about his passion for flight and what he did. And for me, this was a really important lesson that I learned, because when I first started into the technical field, I could barely operate my email. I did not understand what BCC meant, blind carbon copy, and so I'd get these emails that didn't have my name in it, and I couldn't understand why. And my business partner, John, would constantly help me in doing different things. And by looking and breaking a lot of technology online, I actually became very proficient in it. And it leads to the next thing of seeking guidance. I talked about earlier the importance of working for someone else. How I came to learn that breaking things was okay. I got hired on to BYU. If you're Japanese here, you probably have heard of the NTT Communications. It's one of the largest companies in the world. It dwarfs Microsoft by like 200 times in revenues. And BYU hired me as a technical consultant because the company that at CityNet Systems was technical, even though I just did the marketing, so they assumed I was technical, and they hired me on. And they told me that it would take me 3 months to understand how the internet really worked and how they structured the internet. And they were absolutely right. I was able to break through that wall. Many of us have the wall of the internet or automobiles or things that are technical, and we just don't want to break through it. And the best thing you can do when you're trying to break through that wall is to learn it on someone else's dime. Right now, most of you are learning on your dime. You're going to school, which is the second thing here, and which is just as important. But one of the things you can do is working for other people and learn from their experience. And if you can have them pay for it, even the better. Looking at seeking guidance. So I had the opportunity at BYU Provo to come to these lectures. And in fact, it's kind of weird being on the other end and listening, because I was faithfully always coming to these. And the reason why was afterwards I would come and talk to the speaker. And we had a lot of those that spoke help us with CityNet Systems. I encourage you, particularly if you're going to be an entrepreneur, take advantage of, one, the speakers that are here, that are coming in. These people are amazingly successful. Two, the Entrepreneur Center. So when it comes to the pecking order of entrepreneurs in our center, I'm at the bottom. The other entrepreneurs in residence, the Tanners, the Browns, the Woolies, are amazing entrepreneurs. And they're a resource that I feel that are really underutilized, and I encourage you to take advantage of. Another really important resource is to figure out what your education, how you can model your education to what you want. And one of the things I want to throw out that I recently learned about is called the Student Research Associateship. And that's where, and I can't believe this isn't more widely known, that's where you as a student can submit to the school saying, I want to study this for an entire semester, whatever subject it is, and I agree that I will publish on that subject and go to a conference on it. And the school agrees that they'll pay you 10 hours a week to do it. When I heard about this, I was like, wow, I would have loved to have that when I was going to college. You know, I know, and there's nothing wrong for working with food services, but I know those that are working in food service, that's not necessarily something they want to continue on with. There are other ways to achieve your goals, and if you can do something like that, I strongly recommend it. So, the next thing is to learn how to market your passion. And this is really where this whole presentation, this is kind of where it all stemmed from. Marketing is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. And if I can give you any advice and something that helped me, as college students, a lot of you are not sure what you want to do. A lot of people say, what are you going to do when you graduate? And you don't know. And you'll go and you'll try different things. I stumbled onto something that has helped me significantly throughout my career. I, in 2001, purchased this site, mymarketer.net, and really it's a blog now of different marketing thoughts that I have. But I set it up as a sole proprietorship and used it for whatever, and sometimes I'd consult under it, sometimes I'd do different things. But when I created a resume, I had one thing that was consistent through 10 years of trying different things, not going to work. When you create a resume and you have 4 years that show no experience, that can actually hurt you. And if I can give any advice to teenagers or to parents, is to start your kids with a sole proprietorship. Because if you start them at 5 or 6 and you teach them the fundamentals of entrepreneurism, by the time they're 16, they'll have 10 or 11 years of experience doing these things, and they can put that on their resume and not necessarily have to go work for some undesirable jobs. So I encourage you, whether you create a blog or whatever you do, because as a sole proprietorship, you're the CEO and you're the janitor. So you can cater your resume to that. And position yourself to succeed. Now, I don't know if you can see this demotivator. It says persistence, and you have a woman who's running at the beginning and then a guy behind her, and it says, "It's over, man, let her go." This, I think, is apropos. I didn't get married until I was 30, and so I had over 10 years of dating experience. And I was very persistent, and that applied to me many times in my dating career. But I learned something from my dating career quite by accident. And I learned something called the circle of influence. I would be dating a girl, and I'm a very sociable guy, and so I would get to know her roommates, and I'd get to know her family, and I'd get to know all the people in her life, and I would be friends. Nothing where I was trying to manipulate anything, but just genuinely be friends with those people. And then there would come a time where the girls would say, "Is Paul the right person? Should I continue on marrying him?" Well, I'm best friends with her friends, I'm best friends with her family, and all these market of influence are like, "Wow, Paul's a great guy. Why wouldn't you, marry him?" And many of them had plenty of reasons of why not. But I learned in business that the same concept applies. Understanding when you're going into a job, who are the influencers and how you can cater to bring them the best. That's my alarm telling me to be quiet. So I will wrap up here in a few minutes. Insiders is another important key factor in branding yourself. When I came here to the island, I did not know a soul. And so what I did was find my insider, which is Kelly Merrill, who is our department secretary, who knows everything about the island. And I'd go to Kelly and I'd say, "There are cockroaches this big. How do I get rid of them?" And he would give me all the tips. And understanding that in every business or entrepreneur inventor, who are the influencers, who are the insiders you can work with, will actually help you and position yourself to achieve your passion. And the final thing that I want to leave on this is being an overachiever when you are seeking employment or entrepreneurism. This demotivator says, overachiever, everyone knows one, and it's a general with like 300 medals. The story I want to share with this is I had an opportunity where I was applying for a very large fruit drink company to be an international marketer, and I really wanted it. I wanted to travel, I wanted to do all those things. And my competition were 2 other men that one had 20 years experience on me and the other one had 40 years experience on me. And I knew I didn't have a chance, but I had an insider in that company. I knew the secretary. And I called her up and I said, "What are some of the markets that you guys are looking to open?" And she said, "We really want to open up Japan, and particularly in vending machines, because vending machines are big there." So before my interview, I sat down and I put together an in-depth competitor analysis of exactly what I would do to penetrate that market. I came in, sat down with the interviewer, and gave them all my work and said, "Whether you hire me or not, this is something that I think you'll find of great value." And they offered me a job. And that's something, just going an interview is not enough these days, particularly in our economy. Figure out ways that you can stand above the rest. I want to conclude with anchoring your passions. We hear in the scriptures how our passions can set us on fire. And we learn in the Book of Mormon about the embers of passion igniting us, and not in a good way. And so the best thing that I can share with you is having a divine partnership. And for the sake of time, I won't share the story of the house, but I will share two things that I have found. My biggest failure in life, in business, was when I did not go to the Lord. I lost over $1 million and went through one of the darkest times of my life ever because I did not consult the Lord on one of my passions that I wanted to do. And I paid dearly for that. The second thing I want to share with you is the principle that we talked about, or the function that we talked about, of overachieving with our Father in heaven. We have the law of tithing. We are not to pay less or more than 10%. We also have the law of fast offering, which I associate most of my success to. We are asked to give a generous fast. And my wife and I have taken it upon ourselves to figure out a certain percentage of our income that we give. And I promise you here, just as I had a bishop promise me, that if you pay a generous fast, the windows of heaven will be open to you. And I truly attribute a lot of my financial success to that principle. The next thing I want to share with you is to know what matters. Passions are fantastic, but when they overtake your family life, this is my beautiful family, our native son, Samuel. Chloe is the redhead, fiery redhead, and Lydia is the one that has fire in her gut. And they are my life, and they keep me rooted to what is important. I want to share a quick story about my father. My parents are the greatest parents any kid could possibly have, or the greatest parents that I could possibly have. My mother, I've brought over 50 different types of businesses to them, and they have been supportive in everything that I've done. My father was an entrepreneur. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. In the mid-'80s, there was a recession. His company failed. He went to the bishop and said, "What do I do?" And the bishop counseled him to go work for McDonald's. My father has 2 degrees. My father has a lot of success. My father obeyed the bishop's counsel and went and worked for McDonald's. I was 6 or 7 at the time, and I remember my father coming home and having Big Macs and fruit pies, and we loved it. But it wasn't until after my mission that I realized the lesson that my father taught me, and that is, you do nothing to sacrifice your family. There is no greater lesson that a young boy can learn than to see a well-educated, a well-respected man humble himself to his bishop and to the Lord and do whatever it takes to take care of your family. Your passions are not more important than your family. The final thing that I want to conclude on is the power of quitting. A lot of times you hear, don't quit. But obviously, that's not what a smoker wants to hear. They should definitely quit. And this is Batman here saying, need help, call Superman, I'm retired. I've learned that there are times when you need to let go of certain dreams. I've started a couple nonprofits. That was a hard lesson to learn. But I took from that nonprofit, from those nonprofits, valuable skills. And so understand that sometimes it is important to walk away, that beating against a brick wall, you're not going to always break through it, but you can learn exactly why you got those bruises. I just want to end on the so what. Everything I shared with you, so what. I hope that you will take these functions of the law of happiness and look to see how it can apply to yourself. There are a lot of things that I have gained for myself, but you guys have a journey all your own. Some of these things will help, some of these things won't. But I know for sure on the principle of purpose that if you do root yourself to the Lord, if you do make your family a priority, no matter what happens in entrepreneurship, business, career, that in the end, the road that doesn't lead to nowhere will be the road that matters, that leads us back to our Heavenly Father. And I say that in Jesus' name, amen.
we have a few minutes for questions, hopefully some answers. So we'll take, if there are any of those, raise your hand, and then Paul, if you'd repeat them so we can get.
I can do that.
Can you give us the name of that sculptor?
Yeah, it is. So he asked, can you give the name of the sculptor? It's Jan, and that's Jan. And I had to actually play it on the internet to get the name right. It's Wank, and it's W with some sort of Polish E, N, K. So if you type W-N-E-K, if you put that in, you'll find him on Wikipedia.
Other questions? Come on, that's great up.
Samantha.
Smith.
So would you give yourself like a title?
My title? My title is, well, right now, obviously, is teacher at BYU. I hold the position VP of Interactive Media for Question Media, but I also held the janitor position for a long time with my company. So, but that's, I tell people that I am VP of Marketing or Interactive Marketing. Right, so I didn't even cover Pinterest. I'm probably one of the few guys, I know a lot of guys here, when I say I like Pinterest, sometimes I feel like the guys look at me that I'm wearing pink. Love Pinterest. We've created a Pinterest tool called Pin Alerts, and that basically alerts you when someone adds something to Pinterest on a website. Also run a blog called Pinnable Business. What's amazing, that principle I told you about positioning yourself for success, we created the blog Pinnable Business, have done a lot of case studies. I've worked with Walmart and on their Pinterest stuff. There's nobody that's an expert in Pinterest. It's only been around for a couple of years, but because of positioning myself like that, I've had the opportunity to consult the church and help them with their Pinterest strategies and a lot of other big companies and organizations. All right, get out of here. Go to your next stuff. Thanks, guys.